Welcome to the Dark Mind Podcast. Friends and familiars, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dark Mind Podcast, where we explore the boundless realm of dark literature and film. On today's show, I have an author that has blended the serenity of meditation with the horror of the slasher genre. He's joining me today to discuss his recent novel entitled The Namaste Slasher. So without further ado, join me as we delve into the dark insight of Alan Shivers. All right, friends and familiars, we are live on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook with Alan Shivers, here to discuss his recent novel, The Namaste Slasher. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Vincent. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me on this 16th day of November 2024. I discovered your work through Ruth Ann Jagge's recommendation and was intrigued by the juxtaposition of a spiritual term like namaste with the violent connotations of slasher. What I found was a story exploring what Chogyam Trungpa would term spiritual materialism used as a justification for child abuse, leading to the chilling actions of a classic slasher in a serene setting. So I really enjoyed your unique modern spin on a classic genre, and I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
I appreciate that. That's a nice way to start. Keep it coming.
Yeah, love it. Well, let's see here. Give a little brief description. The book follows Eloise, and since she's in Paris, is it the French pronunciation of La Croix?
Ah bah oui. Eloise Lacroix, c'est ça.
All right. A Parisian woman undergoing breast cancer treatment and struggling financially. One of her few comforts is a free weekly group meditation session on Zoom led by a popular hypnotherapist from Brussels named Vera. During one session, as participants sit with eyes closed and mics muted, Eloise is startled by a delivery knock. When she opens her eyes, she notices that a strange man in a Buddha mask is creeping up behind Vera. Eloise unmutes her mic to warn Vera, but it's too late. The man grabs Vera and decapitates her with a saw. And fast forward to 3 years later, now cancer-free, Eloise visits a meditation retreat in, is it Zagreb?
It's in Velebit, so it's close to the capital. But yeah, the mountain Velebit in Croatia.
Okay, but I mean, as far as that city, is that how it's pronounced?
Zagreb, yeah.
Okay, which is actually the same retreat where Vera was broadcasting when she was murdered. So she is determined to uncover the truth, and that is where the story begins. So, in the story, Eloise is battling breast cancer and has not only undergone chemotherapy, but also has had her left breast removed. Is there a connection between Eloise surviving cancer and experiencing survivor's guilt after witnessing Vera's murder? And if so, how does this guilt drive her to pursue Vera's killer?
Definitely, there was... I think the survivor's guilt was the main drive when it came to... She was living a very isolated life in Paris. At first, living in her apartment, she didn't have any family or friends around. The only person who was really there for her was Vera, so the one who led the Zoom sessions. So when she did survive the treatments and everything, I think it was a way for her to have a soul drive to move forward in life, not really maybe being able to cope yet with her own grief in a way for, mourning a part of a life that she's lost, her own life, and then Vera's life on top of it. So I think it kind of drove her as it being like the sole purpose in her life for a while. And then all of a sudden she meets these people at the retreats and she's kind of shocked by herself that she is not as focused anymore on her original drive, just because all of a sudden there's people around in her life, and she never had that before, or she never had that during the cancer treatment. So the survival's guilt is there, but then all of a sudden when she meets these other people, she's kind of sidetracked a little bit and goes, oh, this is part of what life could look like as well.
So was she more introverted and somebody that isolated before the cancer, or did the cancer kind of drive her to that, all the, not only having to worry about death, but also the financial struggles she was plunged into through no fault of her own?
It started when she moved to Paris. Well, in my head, the way I wrote it anyway, because she was living in Curacao, and then by her moving without any family, always being an introvert, and then the entire pandemic and cancer treatment, all of those things added on to the isolation and the way she dealt with life. I think, to be fair, sadly, the way many people did during the pandemic, those who lived alone.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Well, you incorporate the modern phenomenon of Zoom meetings, which existed before, but as you alluded to, became mainstream during COVID. What do you think makes virtual spaces uniquely suited, or in some cases, ill-suited for horror stories?
I think it became one of our only safe spaces within the pandemic in the beginning. Those who felt perhaps more anxiety when everything was spinning around. And for example, I'm a teacher as well, and our school closed down and everything became virtual for like a year and a half, I think. So just that kind of became the safe space when we didn't really know what was happening around, and we had curfews and everything going on. So the fact that you play or you subvert the trope of safeness, and then making that an unsafe space, then there's no safety to be had anymore, when the only safety is virtual, and that part is taken away from you as well. So I thought that made it like inherently creepy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, they talk about the sanctity of your home. You're not, if you're on a Zoom call, that person is not in your home, and anything dangerous that happens to that person is not in your home, but it's invaded your mind. I mean, it's not a completely immersive experience, but it's pretty immersive. I remember when video conferencing first came out, I was like, this, or just FaceTime, really. I was like, man, this is amazing. This is like high tech,
For a while, and then you go, oh God, this again, right?
Yeah. It's like, pretty soon it's going to be like, where's my VR goggles? This is so low tech.
I know. Next session we have together.
Yeah. We're going to have like gloves on where we can like high five each other and feel the.
I'm not sure that's exciting or creepy, but both, I think.
Well, did you see Mark Zuckerberg was on Lex Friedman's podcast, and they did the podcast in the meta virtual universe?
Ooh, okay.
Oh my God. It was so cool and so dark at the same time.
That's where we're headed, probably. So let's enjoy this old school way of talking to each other for now.
Yeah, this low tech old school way we're talking to each other right now.
Exactly.
Well, how do you think modern technology like Zoom changes the dynamics of traditional storytelling, just from a writing perspective?
Well, it adds an extra layer on top of it. And I think that extra layer of virtuality also becomes meta in a way. And the slasher genre since the 90s, since Scream came out, has become very meta or very introspective. And I think kind of using virtuality as an extra layer in the slasher genre works in a way that is kind of campy and fun, which slashers usually are. They're scary, but there's still an element of, not taking itself too seriously. It's not the darkest type of horror, let's be honest. So I like that kind of campy meta layer to it.
Yeah, I was going to say one of my favorite genres is found footage. And it's kind of similar, like your story premise. There's found footage, and then there's accidental viewing. Accidental witnessing, or however you refer to.
I don't know if you've ever watched Dollhouse. It's a slasher that also has the elements that you like the most. Have you watched that one?
Is that like a streaming series?
It's kind of about like adult entertainers who all live together in one house, women basically, entertaining through live cam, and then there's a serial killer who comes into the house, and there's this outside perspective of these fanboys who are watching, and they're the only ones who can actually help out. So it's a cool perspective because it's a mix of like Rec and Paranormal Activity, but then together with a slasher. So I like the element of those two together.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Where do you watch it?
Well, I'm in Belgium, so we don't have HBO and whatnot, but If you just type dollhouse, I'm sure it pops up somewhere for you.
Oh, okay.
Because we don't have Tubi and all those things, sadly, yet.
Oh, okay. So you're watching it on like cable then?
No, I bought it off of YouTube. For us,
Okay.
most of the films that come from the States, you can just get it off of YouTube. So
Gotcha. All right. Well, I noticed that the setting for your slasher story, which is a peaceful retreat center, mirrors the tranquil atmosphere of Camp Crystal Lake in Friday the 13th. So, how does the retreat center influence the behavior and psychology of your characters?
I guess it makes the dichotomy larger, which I'm always a fan of putting two things together that you wouldn't expect. Even in the title, have the Namaste and then Slasher, that dichotomy, and also the fact that these people come there for an introspection, and they've all gone through some sort of trauma. Otherwise, let's be honest, they wouldn't be there to start with, or at least they're open to healing. And just they would probably feel even more relaxed and being even more open to meditation and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, a killer coming in would make them be a lot more unaware, I guess, and make the shock factor a lot stronger. And it's funny that you said that about Friday the 13th, because that was really kind of my goal, to have a modern day Friday the 13th. And Victor Miller, the screenwriter of the original, he read it. Namaste Slasher. I had a chat with him, and he actually
Really?
blurbed the paperback. Yeah, I don't know
Wow.
if you can see, probably not, but here the little text on the paperback is a little Victor Miller blurb. And he's the sweetest guy. He's like 86 or something. And we just talked about, we both have stray dogs. I don't know where mine is. She's somewhere in the back. He does too. Was talking about smoking cigars in between and doing puzzles with his wife. And it was just nice having a chat with someone that I was that not afraid of, but a bit like, whoa, he's done way more than I have. So
Wow. Yeah,
so that was cool.
that is quite an honor.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, so kind of piggybacking off how the retreat center influences their behavior and psychology, how did you decide which aspects of the setting to emphasize to heighten suspense or foreshadow danger? Because there was, the idyllic setting of a remote retreat center was all there, but there was specific aspects.
Yeah, I guess I can't go too much into spoiler territory, right?
Yeah.
But there were certain places where I do think that as a group you would feel most relaxed. Certain things that they did throughout the day that were part of their schedule, and that's where I wanted to have like the first big kill, because you wouldn't necessarily think of that setting. It's difficult to say without, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They do different things throughout the retreats, and I was like, okay, this is where they would feel most relaxed and most open. And then you go kabang. And then I also, from the other side, wanted to have the communist or the post-communist aspect to Croatia, of course, being having gone through the Balkan Wars and the Independence War. So that's why there's also a bunker in there. It was important for me to include that because I used to live in Budapest, so close to Croatia, just a neighboring country. A lot of my friends are Croatian, and I've learned a lot from their culture and from the way that at my age they've gone through trauma already. And, in their passport, it says a different country to the country that it is now, because it's such a recent thing that not a lot has been written about, post-communism and the War of Independence from the 90s. So I wanted to, include those elements because I don't think it has been done that much in Anglophone horror.
Okay. Well, let me just take 1 second to welcome our viewers on YouTube and Twitch. Welcome to the show. Stick around. We appreciate you guys stopping by to listen.
Well, hi. I didn't even know it was live, so hi. There we go. Good to know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the beginning, I said we are live.
I know, but you never know what pre-recorded live or live. But there we go. Hi, people.
Oh, yeah, we are live. It's happening.
Sweaty glance.
I shouldn't have said anything. I'll just tell you at the end, oh, by the way, we were live the entire time.
Yeah, bye.
Well, speaking of modern technology, and I looked this up, and I'm pretty sure I had the pronunciation down pat, but now it escapes me. There is a 23-year-old internet influencer named, is it Akia?
Close.
What is it?
To be fair, Akia.
Akia.
Okay. Good. That's really good.
Okay, I'm going to try her last name too. Vankenpenhouten?
Yeah, really good.
That's it?
Yeah, respecting my mother tongue. Thank you, sir.
Gotcha. All right. And she recently secured a cosmetics deal, but claims to have experienced 3 burnouts by her current age of 23. So social media often fosters a facade of connection while causing isolation. How does this paradox influence her interactions with others, both socially and in high pressure survival situations to come?
Yeah, good question. I think, again, I wanted to play with the dichotomy of what you were saying, having up this facade versus authenticity. And I mean, I'm not that age, so it's difficult to know, but I have talked to a lot of people that age to see the way they would look at things. And being an influencer that early on, and for a couple of years, means she kind of grew up in a certain public spotlight, even though it's TikTok or other apps. And whatever she might think is authenticity might not always be proper authenticity. So then all of a sudden she goes to the spiritual retreats, the mindfulness retreat. At the beginning, she thinks she's being herself, but then gradually discovers that it's okay to be vulnerable and okay to kind of lower that facade. Or it also shows that she's hurt by the image that people have of her as being this superficial. Or I kind of played with that trope of she's basically the hot blonde, right? If you put it bluntly in a slasher. And usually that's kind of the trope that people use, and shallow, or she dies or whatever. So I really wanted to subvert the trope and give her a good story arc and give her some depth, and allow her time to discover who she could be in that story.
Yeah. Yeah. And the aspect of her having had 3 breakdowns before or
Mm-hmm.
by the age of 23, I've never really thought of that before, because when I grew up, we had social media, but people weren't doing the things on social media that they're doing now. Like you can be a 9-year-old entrepreneur as an influencer and have all that pressure on top of you. I mean, being a child star is rare. It only happens to certain people, but there are so many kids from, preteen to teenager to, everything in between, that you just become like you have your own business basically, and all the pressure that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
I just cannot imagine that.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of idea. That's a different generation for us, right? It's difficult for us to fully comprehend it. But I've spoken again to, I teach like 17, 18-year-olds, and a lot of them are dealing with these type of things. And they're already going through a burnout by the time I was just finishing secondary school and going yada, yada, yada in the 90s and just chilling out.
You were doing that too?
So, yeah, I think I hope most of us were yada, yada, yada. Yeah. So I felt like, they have way more pressure than we do. And it's in a way it's kind of sad to see. So I was semi-mocking that culture, but also trying to highlight that there is more pressure than we sometimes realize, and that we way too often say oh, Gen Z is lazy or whatever, when there's just a different method of working or a different perspective on working. Doesn't mean better or worse, I think.
Yeah. Well, the person running the show, so to speak, at the retreat center is named Zen with an X. And Eloise immediately finds herself drawn to Zen. Zen's attire... Sexually drawn. Wink, wink, know what I mean? And Zen's attire suggests that they might be a Buddhist, I guess like an abbot is the best thing I can think of to describe her. So basically someone who renounces earthly pleasures to attain freedom from attachment. However, in the story, they appear to give, Zen I'm talking about, to give signals of romantic interest in Eloise. So what are Zen's spiritual beliefs, position, and behavior, and how do they align or conflict with their actions?
I think the idea behind it was, again, sort of mocking that spiritualistic, capitalistic mix of them being a new wave version of Western Buddhist, which is, popping up way more in Europe than it did, let's say 5 or 10 years ago. And I don't mean that as a derogatory thing at all, because I consider myself spiritual. I meditate every day. So a lot of it was self-mockery, which is the beginning of all wisdom, my dad says.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so
I'm gonna keep that.
That's a nice one, isn't it? So whatever you do wrong, you're just mocking yourself and you're learning. Yeah. So there you go. So I think for Zen, it was this thing of there were no clear set rules of, okay, if you're Buddhist, you should or you shouldn't do this. Or it was like this new wave form of Westernized spirituality, which doesn't have clear set rules. So a lot of people within the spiritual realm are quite open-minded too when it comes to the binary, non-binary, sexuality, gender flux, influx. So I wanted to reflect that. And again, going a little bit stereotypical, because I think when Eloise first sees them, they have like how do you call it again? Dreamcatcher earrings, right? So it's, of course, it's a stereotype, but the idea is to mock that a little bit, but then also show that there's a bit more depth to it if you dig a little deeper too.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned that you meditate. Do you do like a more, I guess, ecumenical, secularized mindfulness meditation, or do you follow a specific discipline like Theravada Buddhism or something like that?
No, I would say more secularized. I have gone on mindfulness retreats, and my ex was actually a mindfulness teacher through the Japanese methodology. So there might be some little hints of that in this story. Who knows? If we're being blunt here, as always, have no filter. It's late here.
Yeah,
but it depends on the day, because sometimes I do just like secularized, or like you said, like it could be a body scan. It'd be connected to specific spiritual alignment. It could be chakra work. It really depends on the day. In the beginning, I did it as just one specific type for a year, but I've been doing that for 5 or 6 years daily now, and it's just become a part of feeling grounded and helping with anxiety, because I'm been in treatment for PTSD for a couple of years. So that's why a part of that is also in the book. And that's something that has helped me tremendously. And that's also why I like to shed a spotlight on what it could do, the positives for people, not just killing people with a Buddha mask, but the nice side of it too.
Well, so did you have to do any research, or is this pretty much the technical specifics of the retreat center and all that is just kind of from your own experience?
My own experience, plus still being in touch now and then with the ex, asking about like what a schedule per day would look like, if there's anything that has developed over the last couple of years, which is different to the way it would have been 5-6 years ago. Talking to other people that were on the same mindfulness course that I was in, and just asking what effect it has for them. Those kind of things. I always work with sensitivity readers, but this time I focused more on the War of Independence, to make sure that, because I know it's quite fresh for a lot of people, like I said before, they grew up with it, people our generation. So I wanted to make sure that I talked about that in a proper way and didn't go into the typical, it's Central Europe, so I didn't want to go to Western Europe with that. There is a big difference within Europe in those two cultural mindsets. So I use sensitivity readers, more for that than for the mindfulness stuff, because that's kind of part of my own life too.
Yeah. Well, this may be my own inexperience in being out of touch with what's currently going on. I've never been to a meditation retreat center, or even on when I was learning Zen meditation, they had something called sesshin, which was like a retreat over a weekend, sort of. And a detail I noticed is that at the retreat center in the story, the participants are not staying in dorms, but camping in tents. Did you do that for a particular reason for the story, or is that just kind of commonplace now?
Both. It's not commonplace necessarily. A lot of the more, how can I put it, upmarket ones, you still have lovely lodging and whatnot. But I have noticed that it becomes more and more of a thing in Europe to have the kind of glamping, so it's tents, but still, it's still rather nice, tends to say. So you have more of an element of grounding through meditation as well. And that you usually, for example, that you would walk barefoot after sessions to go back into the tent to feel more grounded. So it does happen. But I also thought it's, to be honest, way creepier that you are in this massive mansion where everything feels, glamorous and whatnot, even though you're doing this meditation. Then at night, you're going back to the basics. All of a sudden, there's no lights, there's no protection. You're just in a little tent, where a lot of the slashers tend to happen in summer slashers. So yeah, I didn't want to lose that element,
I was going to say it's more of a Friday the 13th feel, although I can't even remember. In Friday the 13th, were they like in cabins, or were they
cabins? But I think later on, I just remember because I watched Jason X a couple of weeks ago, because it's so campy and so fun. And when they sent him back to old Camp Crystal Lake, then there were tents and sleeping bags, and he was smashing this woman against a tree trunk with a sleeping bag. So I guess depends which part you were talking about.
Yeah. Didn't the mom, the actor that played the mom, didn't she die recently?
Did she?
I believe so. Okay. I feel like I remember seeing something, how they always make those posts on social media when a celebrity passes away. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did.
Pamela.
Rip
Pamela. She'll be in our hearts.
She was, spoiler alert to anybody that's never seen Friday the 13th.
Shame on you if you haven't.
Shame on you.
No judging, but shame on you.
I can't even do the math, 1980s. She was scarier than Jason was. That's one of the most, that's one of the scariest parts I remember. It's just, Jesus Christ, calm down.
Absolutely, because the motive was there. But Jason there is a bit of motive, okay, but it also becomes camper and camper as the series goes along, right? It becomes more of a monstrosity rather than there's no particular drive like the mother. Yeah, oof, that man with the close-ups. Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Like just watching the transformation of a matronly woman to this like psychopath, like, oh my God.
Yeah. I was inspired by Victor Miller's own mom, by the way. I interviewed him about Friday the 13th. It's not she wasn't a psychopath, but there was definitely a very troubled relationship there. He was very open about that. So it was kind of fun to see that certain elements were drawn from his family too.
So even screenwriters write for catharsis and get that darkness out of their brain.
Get that trauma out. Exactly.
Well, the next characters, Eloise and Akia, did I say it right?
Beautiful.
Sweet. The next characters they meet at the retreat are Niels, and correct me if I pronounce these wrong, Niels, a Swedish man, Dimi, a Bulgarian man, and Esma, a Bosnian woman. Did the idea of having 5 close-knit characters band together against a killer stem from Dunbar's number? And for those that aren't familiar with Dunbar's number, basically that it's hard to have really meaningful relationships with more than 5 people. I think one of the cell phone companies actually did a Fave 5 where you had unlimited calling. Unlimited calling. Before that was, pretty much all plans have unlimited calling now, but, back when it was limited. So did it, and how did each of their personalities contribute to the group's cohesion in the face of danger?
Yes and no. Like in my debut Europea halls, there were 6 of them, so that doesn't work for that theory, sadly. But to be fair, I think it's a subconscious thing, because the moment that you said something went ding ding, because even with Europea halls, my other novel, from the moment there's 5 of them, the cohesion starts. Not really with the first one, because you have the first girl, you have the final girl, or you don't. But in this case, yes, even though there's different ages, which you don't usually see that much within slashers, that it's not just teens, but it's also someone in their 40s and in their 30s. And so what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry, because the ding ding happened and then the rest went blank.
just did it come from Dunbar's number, the utilization of the 5, and how did each of their personalities contribute to the group's cohesion? Because the personality question doesn't really fit into the Dunbar's theory. It's just one thing I noticed, that there are a lot of personalities that exist to complement the other, and they usually come in groups of 4, like the Beatles, the Golden Girls, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, no, really good question. You are a clever man indeed. That's true. I think basically I grew up with 2 psychologists, my parents, so they've always taught me about these different methodologies and whatnot, and my dad would analyze me if I would ask that to happen. Otherwise, no. But
he did it anyway.
Mental notebook,
He just didn't tell you.
Yeah, perhaps. No. But I think I always wanted different characters to match together, because you wouldn't think they could work together, because there's one girl, the Bosnian one, Esma, who's rather distant and cold at first, but she's also very strong. And then you have someone who's a bit more introspective and warmer and kinder. But those are usually the people that mesh best, people that are not all the same, because then there's too much friction a lot of the times. I think personally, I'm quite extrovert, and if you put me together with 5 extroverts, it ain't gonna be pretty. So I think it's good, to mix people up, and you can always learn from other characters too. So that was the idea, to have just people that could learn from each other. And it at first might be a bit apprehensive, going, I don't know if they're my people. But when it hits the fan, then they can count on each other. So I really wanted to have a close-knit group. Also because I think in a lot of slashers, they're not always best friends. There's a lot of backstabbing happening. Not in all of them, but it happens quite often. And I like the idea of people actually being friends and being there for each other, and not getting killed off just because they have sex, for example, but they're being a bit more of a deeper rooted question behind it.
Yeah, I heard, his name's escaping me. He has a podcast, and he was talking about how horror movies are a reflection of the fears at the time. So like,
Agreed.
so the AIDS epidemic was going on, and horror movies was like, if you had sex, chances are you were about to die.
Yeah.
Know?
Or was it Texas Chainsaw, the Vietnam War, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was intentional, subconscious, or just a completely random coincidence, but I remember, oh God, Tyler Geis. Shout out to Tyler.
Okay.
He doesn't have his podcast anymore, but it's still up, I believe. So in contrast, there were Zen, Joseph, and Milo or Milo?
Joseph and Milo.
Joseph with a, okay. Who were, I guess, not necessarily employees of the center. I imagine they all kind of were working together and maybe renting the center. I don't know how that works. Something like
In my
that.
head, it was Milo's old house, which has gone derelict a little bit, and he wanted to pump it up with some new blood and some money and investments. That's the way I had it in my head.
Gotcha. Well, so did you see them as purely functional characters, or did they have personal arcs of their own?
Well, without spoiler territory, there's definitely arcs, or one arc for sure. You've read it, you know what I mean, towards the end, that not as big of an arc as the rest perhaps, but more of a twist, I'd say. So I think their purpose was more of a, let's put in more suspects that could all have different motive for being behind these killings. A bit of comic relief here and there too, because it's needed in Slasher. But they're definitely not the main characters, but I did want to have some twists and turns that could be connected to them potentially.
Gotcha. Well, the slasher's backstory is particularly interesting as it explores how and I'm going to try not to be too specific here, I don't want to give anything away, but it explores how a fundamentalist form of Eastern spirituality can be just as harmful as a mainstream fundamentalist philosophy, such as that of, and I hate to say the name out loud, the Westboro Baptist Church. So how does fundamentalism, regardless of its origin, play into the motivations and actions of your slasher?
It's one of the main themes for me personally when I wrote it. I always liked stepping away from stereotypes, and religion for me personally can be dangerous potentially if in the wrong hands or if dealt with improperly. And I have nothing against religion as such. It's more of a like, what could happen if it's in the wrong hands? And in this case, it were two very intellectual parents that were very spiritual, in the mountains of Velebit in Croatia, that were so fundamentalist within their spirituality that they kind of almost demonized their own son, and to a certain extent actually demonized their own son. So yeah, I wanted to bring that element in to show, okay, spirituality per se doesn't mean that it's all safe if it's not in the right hands. If you think of all these cults, for example, a lot of them start with the premise of like New Wave Buddhism or New Wave spirituality, and some shady things happen in there too. So it's not just a one-sided thing. So I kind of wanted to go against that maybe archetypical way of thinking. I don't want to get too political, but I think you know what I mean with this. That's important to have, a broad aspect of not just one thing can be dangerous, or not just one thing can be safe.
Yeah, I wonder how many cults start out completely altruistically, but then money and power corrupt,
Yeah, good point. That was kind of the thing with this too. I think in my head, the parents were, they were kind people. They wanted to educate themselves. They'd just gone through a war. So a lot of the people at the time, religion wasn't really even allowed. So they try to find a different methodology or a different way of living, a different way to finding purpose. But then they might have gone that hardcore because of trauma or intergenerational trauma in this case. So that was a theme as well, the intergenerational trauma of what could happen post-war in a village or anywhere.
Well, have any reader interpretations of the slasher's backstory surprised or challenged your original intent? And by that smile, I'm thinking possibly like, oh God, yes, let me tell you.
Yes, but in a way, it's very difficult to say. I could tell you after recording because you read it.
Well, let's just label it on a scale of 1 to 10. How unexpected were some of them?
A decent 7.7.
Really?
I would say.
Wow.
Yeah. And which is why, I don't know if you saw, but a week ago or a week and a half ago, I released the hardcover edition. and it's a bit different. As a good indie writer, I am prepared.
Outstanding.
There's a paperback, and that's the hardcover. And this one
Gotcha.
has a bonus chapter, and I worked together with my ARC readers actually on this one. So I asked the advanced readers what they saw in the slasher, or what they felt was real or unreal behind it, and they all had a little chapter in there. So there's different visions and different insights as a bonus chapter, which was really fun to play with, to kind of let go of your own work, because it's not your own work once it's out there. I believe people do it as they please. So it was fun playing with that concept a little bit.
Nice.
So yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised by people's originality. Let's put it that way.
So what did you say? 7.7?
Yeah.
What percent?
Specific.
What percent? Yeah. What percentage would you put it at 7.7?
What do you mean? Sorry.
Well, so the mass majority was at a 7.7, or
like that? You mean? Yeah, about half, I'd say.
Okay, so 50% were like at a 7.7 of like, what the hell? Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm. But it's really interesting to see what people do with stories too, and I think I do the same with when I read other people's work, and I always reach out to the authors if they get back to me. You know, some do, some don't, and that's fine. But it's really fun asking, like, okay, is this what you actually meant? Is this more of an allegory? Is this, is this some kind of metaverse, whatever? So yeah, it's fun playing with that.
Yeah. Well, if you were to revisit this world, what aspects of the retreat or the slasher would you explore further?
The Slavic folklore, 100%.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of folklore as is, yeah. And it was touched upon quite a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
More in the third act than in the first two. But I'm intrigued by anything that is more Slavic, me being more Germanic, being from Belgium. It's a very different type of folkloric or paganism. So it would be more paganist rooted, or, Slavic, I would say.
Gotcha. Well, how do the characters' reasons for attending the retreat shape their reactions to the horror that unfolds?
Good one. I think that it just comes out of the blue, quite literally. I think that they're there for, finally, peace. We've gone through all this trauma. But at the same time, they've all had their own coping mechanisms because they've gone through some therapy, or they've gone through mindful healing. Because of the baggage that they have, they all react differently. Like one girl escaped from a cult, and that's not a big spoiler because that's said in the beginning, the Bosnian girl, Esma. And because of what she's gone through and that she had to fight her way out, she's very well equipped to deal with murder and to deal with a maniac.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And I guess then the influencer, for example, Achje, is a bit more like, what the heck is happening? How do I cope with this? But you see, everyone goes through a moment of shock, or initial shock or freeze, before they turn fight or flight. And I guess in this case, they all fight at the end, which I wanted them to be strong characters, not just like, oh no, I'm scared, kill me. That doesn't make for interesting reading. So.
Nah. Absolutely. Well, do you see this story as a critique of modern trends? I mean, you kind of already answered this previously. You're speaking to the commercialization of spirituality.
Yeah. A critique, but also critique of myself, as I said before. And also, it doesn't mean that I critique everything around it. It's just a fun way of playing with certain elements that sometimes shouldn't be touched, I think. I mean, if you're going to tell me don't write about this, that's the first thing I want to write about. It's the reverse psychology thing. So, yeah, it's fun to write about those things because it has sprung up a lot in Europe. I'm not sure. Is it the same in the States? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think New Age is the term anymore, but people really have parlayed the concept of mindfulness and just, tweaked one thing here and there and packaged it as their own, and are just making some serious money. It's a simple concept to, I guess, understand, but it is hard to put into practice, So
yeah, it depends how pure or how core you go with the original message. Yeah, if you think about the entire healthcare industry that surrounds or even meme culture when it comes to very demure, very mindful, very cutesy, all those
somebody
things.
was going to say that.
Of course. I mean, I even used it to promote my own work because it's kind of mocking the culture and therefore like mocking yourself again. It's the healthiest thing you can do in my mind. So.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say.
It's not very demure, sorry.
Yeah, damn it. It'll come back to me. What were we talking about before the demure? We were talking about the
capitalization, I guess. Yeah.
Packaging of mindfulness.
Mm-hmm. I think of kombucha straight away when I hear that.
Oh, yeah?
Somehow.
Okay.
Because of the microbiome and the link between the gut and the brain. And that's what comes to mind for me. And then I saw in the States you have hard kombucha now. To me, is such a weird concept because it's the idea of sober people here in Belgium. Because I'm sober now, we would go for kombucha, but then it's fermented a couple of extra times, and then all of a sudden you have alcoholic kombucha. And then it steps away from the health factor, I guess.
So you said you're sober?
Mm-hmm. Have been for about 4 years. Yeah.
I just celebrated 12.
Wait, this is why we need VR hand gloves, man. Next time.
We could do the like full on tactile.
There we go. And mindfulness interest too. It's nice to see have something in common.
Now let me tell you something. You know how spirituality, as far as recovery, especially in 12 steps, is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I used to meditate for half an hour a day. I just can't seem to maintain it. I just don't like it. My mind wanders. I know what they tell you. Well, if your mind wanders, just bring it back to your breath.
Bring it back to the breath. Exactly.
I don't want to do that every 5 seconds, And the concept of nirvana, or the state of, the bliss of no attachment. Like, I just can't not be attached to things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm attached to my possessions. I'm attached to this show. I'm attached to my wife. I can't just let stuff go. I just can't do it.
That's fair. There shouldn't be judgment on all those things either, I think. I think that's one of the first things that should come with mindfulness, the not judging people if they don't or can't follow a certain concept. And the sentence that you said, do you remember? That's actually in the book, like, when someone was wandering off, I need to bring it back to the breath.
Yeah,
Did you go, oh crap, why is this in there?
Luckily, it was the digital version, so I couldn't throw my Kindle.
Just buy the paperback, it's fine.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I just can't do it. So, but...
we all have our own ways, right? There's don't think it's better necessarily.
Yeah. Well... How does your story bring a modern twist to the slasher genre? What do you think sets it apart?
I would hope several elements. I think the story itself probably feels familiar because it follows certain tropes, but at the same time it subverts the idea of the typical first girl, final girl. It's a very American genre to start with, very like Midwestern or sleepy town. So I thought it was really nice bringing it to Europe, me being European, linking it to post-war times in Croatia. I think those elements, I could be very wrong, but I haven't seen that myself. So I thought it was nice bringing in there's 5 protagonists, so all from different countries in Europe. So bringing the cultural differences in there is for me, a fun element to play with. Yeah, I think those are the main things. And again, the mindfulness retreats, I haven't seen or read that specifically in a slasher. So I hope that bringing the dichotomy of those two together, that people can enjoy that. And I had the most fun writing this one. I've written 4 books. I'm on the 5th now. This one was by far the most fun I've had. Really, it was a joy to write this one.
What was Aki's catchphrase? Namaste, bitches.
Namaste, bitches. Exactly. In my head, she was saying Namaste, by the way, just butchering it. That's the way I visioned it.
Oh, Namaste.
I saw this video of like 2 Americans saying Namaste, everyone, in my head. And I was like, oh, that's the way I envisioned it when I was writing it. Namaste, bitches.
Well, it's a fairly common question, but I really enjoy asking it. So, as an author, are you an outliner or a pantser?
Can I say both, or is that not allowed?
Yeah.
Starts with outlining, even on paper first. I'm old school because I'm working on the 5th at the moment. So I outlined, I have like one thing for characters, one for setting, like detailed setting description. Then for the opening scene, then I start writing online chapter by chapter. I write like a skeleton, I would call it, kind of. And then when I go into the first draft, usually about halfway through, I go, okay, what would I really enjoy being the next chapter as a reader? Trying to, because I like reading a lot too, obviously. And then it usually switches a lot. Like even in European Halls, my debut, the actual killer ended up not being who I intended at all in the first draft. And it just completely switched halfway through, and then I thought, ooh, let me subvert this one because it's just fun subverting stuff. So yeah, a mix, I would say. And I enjoy it too. I don't want to be too stuck to something. I don't give myself some people do like 2 hours a day from this time to this time. That stresses me out. I teach literature at the same time too in Brussels here. It's also a pretty intense
Oh,
job.
wow.
So I want to do it when I can and when I have the mental capacity, because otherwise it's not going to be the story that I want to tell.
So kind of like a lot of authors I interview, you have an outline that acts as sort of the scaffolding around the building
Yeah.
you're constructing.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
Gotcha.
But even the scaffolding can be torn down. It happens. Namaste actually too. Actually, the route of Namaste really changed halfway through. You know, the ending that wasn't supposed to happen at all originally. It was a lot more grounded, let's say, a lot more rooted in reality at first. And then I thought, well, I've done that before with my previous trilogy, so let's go a little bit more floaty. So yeah, yeah.
Well, how did you develop the pacing of the story? And the reason I ask that question is because you have a mix of deep introspective characters and others who were more surface level working closely together.
Mm-hmm. So the storyline of pacing within a chapter or within a scene, you mean?
Yeah. Or I mean, just across the entire story, because like you've got some characters that need to be focused on because you're getting deep into their mind and how they're dealing with it. And then you've got other guys that just want to have sex.
Excuse me, there's so much more than that.
And they want, but I mean, as far as like in particular scenes, there's just this going on and all of this going on. How do you, I guess, develop the pacing across the storyline?
I guess it's something that I've learned at university because I studied English, Spanish literature. We always learned about this. I don't know how you call that in English. We call it, literally translated from my mother tongue, would be tension bow. This thing where to a certain moment you build up tension and then a viewer or a reader needs a release off, because otherwise it would become too intense and they would need the break, so that you create the break yourself. So that's kind of, as I start writing, at a certain point I feel, okay, I'm getting tense now writing this. It's been a bit too much. Usually for me, tension becomes making sentences shorter. So you read quicker, the brain reacts through it more quickly. And then when I want to release that tension a little bit, the sentences become a lot more long-winded, or there's more detail, more intricacy. So try to alternate that way. Or like dialogue is quite relaxing, but then a chase scene is written in a completely different way, so to build up tension again. And the most difficult thing for me is writing chase scenes, but it's also the most rewarding part, because if there's anything I love about slashers, it's a chase scene.
Yeah.
Give me a good old chase scene anytime. That's where my pen name comes from. Alan Shivers isn't my real name, so it comes from Helen Shivers from I Know What You Did Last Summer, because that's my all-time favorite chase scene.
Okay.
But writing that it is tricky, because you can't just go like scream runs, die, bye. It needs to be like built up properly. So I guess I diverted from the question there. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
That's what happens.
Yeah, well, no, that's very interesting. I never thought about tension being short sentences, introspection, or just the standard being long sentences. And I mean, how long does it take the tension to, I mean, I guess it varies, but is there kind of like an average amount of time where you've been tense for so long, you're like, all right, I and the reader need a break?
Yeah, I usually, because I like print off my first drafts and stuff, and I'm writing number 5, like I said, and there was like 8 pages of like high on tension from the get-go in chapter 1. I was like, we need a description of a building now, because otherwise people are gonna go. So then I started describing the beautiful golden domes of an Orthodox church for a moment, to just have a moment of like, okay, we can go again.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the chase scenes. I know there was parts where the slasher it seemed like he was like in a full sprint after them, but there was also that standard thing you see in really campy movies where the victim is running as fast as they can, and somehow the slasher is keeping up with them just at a brisk walking pace.
Absolutely. A good old Michael Myers. Why not, right? Yeah, but again, that's a trope I love playing with, and people that know the genre appreciate it. And then usually, if general reviews have been good, I'm super grateful. But if there's like a lower rating, it's usually like, it didn't make sense that she ran up the stairs. Something like this. I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of part of the genre. So, it's nice to play with that.
Yeah. And it's a very effective way to convey the feeling of there's nowhere to run because, no matter how fast you run or where you go, he's just calmly after you. So.
He'll find you anyway, even in some little nooks and crannies of a building, yeah.
Well, do you have a particular routine or environment that helps you focus while writing? Like,
depending on the draft. First draft, I should say, proper position in la but in reality, I'm lounging in the sofa with my dog next to me. But I did tell myself that I want to start going to cafes just to get out of the house a bit more with that stuff because it gets very isolating and insulating. But then when it comes to when I get the copies back from the proofreader and the editor, when I really need to check commas and stuff, then I'm really like at my desk, and you can't see it now, but I live in Brussels in the capital of Belgium, and I'm on quite high up, so I really see like the skyline of the city from here. So it's a really nice feeling you're kind of floating above the city, but you're still part of it, and it gives me peace when I'm working.
Very nice.
So yeah, work like that.
What time is it?
And no music. Now it's 6:10 in the evening. What time is it over there?
11 a.m. Like 11:09.
7. Yeah, so 7-hour difference.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pitch black out here and freezing. Whoa, really cold.
We were just in Colorado. We love the cold weather. Altitude, not so much. I did not fare well in the altitude.
Did you get the sickness? Yeah,
I did because I don't drink water. I just cannot do it. And I drink, or you're in recovery. You know how we like consume caffeine, right?
Oh, no, I can't do that because I don't get palpitations. So it's one cup in the morning and then kombucha. But not the hard kombucha, the real one.
Yeah. I didn't know what kombucha was, and just happened to catch, it said it wasn't the stuff you have to have an ID to get, but it said may contain trace amounts of alcohol. I was like, wait a minute, this has alcohol in it? Like, well, yeah, it's kind of a fermentation process. I was like, okay, to put that back, that's the last thing I need.
Yeah. But in that case, I mean, yeah, trace. I mean, it's like 0 point something that even like here, if you get like a real apple juice, it's still fermented. So there's traces of that any kind of fermentation. So if you eat like gherkins, there's traces of fermentation in that too. So
no kidding. Wow.
So we've been cheating. I'm just kidding.
Well, no, it's not anything about cheating. It's just like at my day job, we use a concentration of rubbing alcohol to clean some of our equipment. Just the smell of rubbing alcohol is so triggering. Like,
Yeah. I get you. But I respect that many years.
Yeah, it's made me a little crazy. No, I'm just playing.
Same. I mean, anyone in horror, let's be honest.
Yeah.
We're good people, but we're a little bit weird.
Yeah, a little bit weird. Oh, God. Well, we've been talking about camp and comedy, but as far as the other aspects of the actual like horror that makes you uncomfortable, do you want it to feel more psychological or more visceral?
A combination again of it too. I think it starts off being quite visceral because you're literally going through an extra layer of this happening virtually in the opening scene. So you're kind of, I would say, vicariously living it viscerally, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But then it becoming more psychological towards the end when you see the route it's going. And then you go like, oh, didn't expect this like folkloric element to it and what that could do to a person. And also psychologically, definitely for Eloise, my girl, having gone through, cancer treatment and everything, you want her to do well, you want her to succeed in life and meet people finally after the installation and isolation and whatnot. So I guess a mix. I don't see is it one or the other.
Do you see it as like an offset percentage, like it's 60% psychological, 40% visceral? I'm a very detailed person, if you haven't noticed.
I was going to say you're more of a numbers guy than I am. I think I'm a very like feelings kind of person and in my own emotions. But well, how would you say it? You've read it too? For you, was it more visceral, more psychological?
I would say more psychological because even when there's no violence going on, you're still inside somebody's head, and it's not just like the romantic feelings that Eloise had for Zen or stuff like that. There's always something very deep going on. And then that's compounded when you add the violence. And when the violence, like you were talking about how the tension ebbs and flows, even after the violence has ebbed, there's still like this introspective recovery. So I would say I would say 60-40, maybe even more. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, thank you. And I appreciate that you see the different layers too, because I think on the surface it does come across as very campy fun, right? But I did want to make sure that there are elements to it that maybe are not,
Yeah.
you can't spot at first, but they're definitely there for me because a lot of my own life is in there too. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, so now that the book is complete, is there anything about the writing process you would do differently? Something, maybe a workflow that would have made your life easier?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I would love this to be the full-time job, right? That's the dream, I think, of many of us.
Uh-huh.
And I'm striving towards it. To be honest, it is going better and better by the month, but I don't want to jinx myself. But my goal is in 2-3 years to make it a full-time thing. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You can try in life. No, actually, no, because I wrote this over summer and I really gave myself the time to just work 2 months. I wrote this actually in a month and a half, the book. And then, of course, rewrites happened and everything, but it was done in a very, very quick way without feeling rushed. And now with the new one again, I have 2 weeks off in December, and I know that's when I'm going to be doing like the hardcore writing. I want to do like 200 pages or something in 2 weeks. So no, I'm happy with the way it went. I think one of the things with the mindfulness is also that be kind to yourself. There's always going to be flaws or things you could have done better. No, I think I was way too harsh on myself with the debut, even to the point where I'm a little bit, not embarrassed is a big word, but I know I'm better now than I was in the beginning. I think it's normal for any author. But I was way too harsh. I wrote a trilogy in a year. I mean, I didn't give myself any space to breathe the first year. And now it's been a year and a half. It's still very fresh as being an author. So I want to give myself the space to make sure it's what I want to produce. If that makes sense.
Mm.
So I didn't give myself a deadline for the new one.
Well, what is, we've been talking about camp and comedy. What are your thoughts on the more extreme form, like goofy comedy mixed with serious violence that's just over the top enough to where that's, comical. And what I'm thinking about is Art the Clown in the Terrifier series, which, just forget about all the violence, just his expressions and the things, just is hilarious to me. I don't know, maybe that's a reflection on my psychology, but
or ours maybe. But yeah.
I think most people, even if they didn't like horror movies, although there's a lot of people that are just default terrified of clowns, so maybe that wouldn't be.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the fact that there's blood on the mask or whatever, they would just go no.
Yeah,
I think I'm a fan of Terrifier, but I can't watch it twice. I'm not the best with intense gore, but I want to watch it for the sake of the art of it. And there's also a nice lore, We're 3 movies in now, so the lore is expanding a bit, and I'm very intrigued by it. But it does make me a little bit queasy. Actually, the third one wasn't as bad as I thought it would. I think after the bedroom scene in number 2, I can cope with anything now. So,
yeah, I don't think. Jesus Christ,
Mommy, remember?
Yeah, well, no, I've only seen one, I think. But what's crazy is I had him in my head. And, thinking, they would think it's funny, but I forget actually what he truly looks like. He is fucking terrifying.
No, he's proper scary. Just, the shape and everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, just the eyes. Oh, God. Oh, look at this shit. What is happening here?
I made a meme with that one.
Oh,
I started with like that and going, oh, cute. And then Mariah Carey exploding and going, as a horror fan, So using that picture, yeah.
Oh, my God. That is... Which one is that from? Is that 2?
That's the third one.
Oh, I see. It says Terrifier 3. Okay.
Yeah, because in the third one, it's a Christmas slasher, the newest one, the latest one. I love the fact that it's indie and that it's gotten so big through indie. I think it's the highest grossing indie horror of all times, if I'm not wrong.
Maybe.
The third one. Definitely in the US. I don't know internationally, but in the US for sure. So it's cool because it opens up potentially a lot of doors to other indie horror screenwriters, writers, directors. So it's cool. There's a revival happening through... There has been a revival with slashers in general, and then specifically with Terrifier. It helps.
And what is I always forget this. I talk about this all the time. The director's name, Caleb?
Damien Leone?
Damien Leone?
Close.
It started with
It's the middle name.
I got nothing. Yeah, well, he was a special effects guy before he started directing. So all the special effects, at least initially, I don't know about the sequels, but were all practical effects.
Yeah,
And practical effects are always better. They're just so expensive. So
100%.
I wonder, if he's got way to cut corners as far as making stuff himself or using alternate materials. I saw some behind the scene footage about, how they had that stuff set up. That it looks like so much fun. Like when you were a kid doing Halloween and you got a hold of something that you could use to make yourself look wounded or something like that. That must be I'm sure you've got the pressure as a director of getting the movie made, but as special effects, just being able to play around with that stuff.
That must be really fun. And I saw that he still did the special effects on Stream, that new horror movie that just been released 2-3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Because Art the Clown, well, the actor, he's also in there, not as Art the Clown, but as a different villain again.
Oh, okay.
But recognizable body language and stuff was a little bit like Art the Clown. So I was like, yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
they've been working together for a while, it looks like.
Nice. Well, let me pull something up here.
What's coming up now? Okay.
It's nothing scary. Let's see. I wanted to ask you about your award. I wanted you to tell me about your award for Bookstagram Novel of the Year. And I have a picture here. There we go.
Time for a humble brag, is it?
A humble brag, hell yeah.
God. Well, that's genuinely how I felt. That wasn't a fake, that one. My roommate took that one, arrived home by mail. So it was the Bookstagram Awards. There each year. They support indie authors on Instagram with a large focus on horror, which is really nice. They're UK based, but they work internationally. That's my debut there. European Halls, the trilogy, won the LGBTQAI plus novel of the year. I was kind of mad because for a debut, you don't really expect much to happen. And it's been going well since the release and still is going well. So I'm just very, very grateful. You don't really, you don't know what to expect, but it's nice that people have connected to it. And definitely within the queer community, I would say number 2 and 3 are far more queer and about found family than the first one. I think I was kind of finding my voice a bit in the first and so insecure and whatnot. I think it makes sense. Still have the imposter syndrome thing, but I just kind of go with my guts more now. So yeah, it was lovely to get that. So thanks for people who voted.
Yeah, imposter syndrome is an interesting thing, especially some of the people that, reveal that they have it. Like,
I think most people who are creatives have it. Because you're always going to compare yourself, it's really unhealthy to do so. I think it makes sense that you always have peers that you compare yourself with. And even for Books and Brew that I'm going to next year, being the only Belgian there, for example, I think being the only non-native, those things are scary for me. I don't write in my own language, so it adds an extra layer of anxiety of like, but
Yeah. Does it have something to do with the fact that I guess you have such an intimate connection with it that it came from you. So you know it backwards, forwards, you know exactly what you're trying to convey. Do you get almost sick of it?
Oh yeah. Like for the book itself, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had this with the 4 books now that the moment it's released, like
just want to move on.
Yeah, I haven't read it in a couple of months now, the previous one. I'm very proud of it and I love it. It's because you have to look at it so many times with editing and proofreading. You start doing the build-up, the pre-orders, all the promotion. If you're indie, you know this, you have to do it all yourself. There's no PR company helping you out or anything. All of a sudden you become a marketeer and I'm not good at that. I have to learn it. So it's tricky, isn't it, those things? So I think social media burnout with Achi is very much a thing. At the moment I need a little bit of a breather from it too. I feel that I'm finally just writing and that's super enjoyable, but all the rest is a bit like, whew, I need a breather. It's pretty intense.
Is that why most people, it's difficult, from what I understand, it's difficult to finish a novel? Is that why some people have so many false starts? They get a quarter of the way into the novel, and as they're going through it, they're, reading it over and over, or whether they're outlining or whether it's a pants, that they just get sick of it and they're like, nobody's going to like this, and just toss it? Or
I think so. And it's one of those moments when it's not out in the world anyway yet. So you can kind of do whatever with it. I remember for the first book, the first draft, I took it so seriously. But now I realize that whatever I'm writing now, no one's ever going to see that. So you can always chuck it. And I mean, it's painful for yourself because it's a lot of time wasted and energy and emotions wasted. But you'll still learn from it, though, at the same time. So I've never tossed anything away. If anything, something came back for a sequel. Or so far, I've been fairly good with that, I think.
all right. Well, tell me about your upcoming convention appearances.
Yeah, quite a lot. I'm doing well for me. Oh, there you're really prepped, aren't you?
I
My
am.
lord. Well, there's a last minute one in Brussels next week, but other than that, I'm going to Winter Boot, and I'm really excited for that one in the Netherlands because it's like this big festival of underground and trash horror from all over the world, and it's with all these producers and whatnot. So I have a stand there. Then the Canterbury one is connected to Indie Horror Chapter, and they're also connected to Books of Horror. So that's the second chapter. The first was in Birmingham, second in Canterbury, which is cool. It's a lot of traveling for me being in Belgium, but it's fun. Then in April, BIF, that's the Brussels International Fantasy and Horror Film Festival. It's actually the biggest horror festival in Europe. That's something that I'm like super really grateful for because I've been going to that festival for years now as a viewer. And now I've been selected to have my stand there, but also to pitch my books to producers and to directors that will come from all over the world from in horror worlds. There were like 6 pitch spots, and I was lucky enough to get one of them. So that'll be fun to get to know directors and producers, and I'm already in touch with some of them from the horror worlds. So yeah. And then the Books and Brews one is the first one I'm doing in the States, in Indiana. I forgot McCornville, I think it's called, the city or the town. That's by Books of Horror. That's what I told you about the imposter syndrome. That's where it kicked in.
Yeah.
The other ones too, to be fair, but there's something about taking an 8.5 hour plane ride to go somewhere by yourself and going, hiya, here's me books. I'll give you some Belgian chocolate if you read them. Yeah, the last of the season so far is in Dudley. That's next to Manchester, where I used to study uni. So that'll be fun to go back there. And I'm getting a lot of special editions at the moment. The second picture you see of the trilogy, I'm getting like a box set with like 3D print and stuff on it. So that would be really fun. And that's just for the conventions to also kind of show gratitude for people that have shown interests to bring something a little bit new.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's really fun. I've only done one so far in Birmingham, and I've met so many really nice people. And I'm already in a group chat with the Books and Brew crew with all the authors in there. And it's it's really fun talking to them. A lot of really lovely people in there.
Well, let's see. I feel like I don't need to ask this question now. I think I know.
So,
but who do you consider the most iconic slasher, Jason or Michael?
What do you think? I'm curious.
I prefer and think I think it's Jason.
For me or for you?
What's that?
For you or for
me? For me. I'm sorry. Yeah.
For you, Jason? No. I was just thinking. I think Michael Myers.
Really? Okay.
For me. It's the only slasher that actually still scares me. Jason he's not that scary. There's not that many.
Okay.
Good. Damn it!
Not scary. Iconic.
Okay, if we're talking iconic, Jason, 100%.
Okay.
If talking scary, Michael Myers, because there's the blankness. But the fact that he went to hell, he went to space. I mean, how iconic can you be, right? Yeah. So he fought Freddy Krueger. So
yeah, no, I mean, you talk about. I guess you don't find Jason scary anymore, at least. Earlier, later, yeah.
No, in the beginning, yeah, with the knapsack and stuff, that was scary. The first two, afterwards, it became fun. But they always did lack in chase scenes for me. Like I told you, I'm a big sucker for that. Yeah. And Halloween is better with chase scenes, I think.
Gotcha. Well, what is the life of Alan Shivers? Can we say your real name, or you just want to keep it with Alan Shivers?
You can say it. I mean, Michiel is my real name.
What is it?
Michiel.
Michiel? Okay.
Uh-huh.
What is the life of Michiel like outside of writing?
Well, teaching, as I told you, I actually teach a European school in Brussels, which is why Europea Halls is based on the international boarding school vibe of that school. I spend a lot of time with my doggy, my stray dog from Romania. I meditate, as I told you before. I'm very big into architecture, so I love going just around Europe and around anywhere in the world, but particularly I love like Art Nouveau. So I love watching that kind of facades when I'm walking around, traveling, learning languages. I speak 7, not all to the same extent, but 5 on a good level. At a good level, wow! I just proved myself wrong there. Christ,
you speak 6 more than I do.
There we go. Got something going for me. It was at school. I was always really bad at math, science, all those ones, chemistry. So I like overcompensated with languages. I think my ex was Polish, so learned Polish. I lived in Budapest, so had to learn Hungarian. So it was kind of the way life went. So I've lived in 5 countries by now. So I think that's part of who I am by now too. That I don't just feel Belgian, but a little bit more European, and I like having that part of me in the books too. Just having the multicultural aspects and learning from other people and different languages. It's really fun and enriching to learn from others. And I love a good cozy time or going to a nice little bar without beer. Still a bar. Everyone around drinks me, but that's fine.
Yeah.
You get used to that.
Uh-huh.
I think, traveling. That'd be the main thing. I've got 3 more countries to do in Europe, and I've seen all of the European ones. And then as the States, I've been like 6 or 7 times too, but Indiana will be the first time for me next summer.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I'm going to revert back to your nom de plume. And,
I love that. A bit of French. C'est très bien, ça. Très bien prononcé.
Sure.
Well done.
Well, Alan, it has been a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely, likewise. I wanted to ask, by the way, as a language nerd, Midgard, it sounds like a Scandinavian last name.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, it's not actually my last name. I love Norse mythology, and I consider myself a bit of a materialist. And in Norse mythology, Midgard is Earth. It's the natural world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Midgard, because Gard like garden, I guess, a little bit or something in middle of. I don't know. I'm just. Yeah,
I'm sure that there's probably some the etymology behind that word probably has something to do with that. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Because I know that a lot of Americans have Scandinavian or Irish. There's a lot of.
I'm straight Scottish.
Scottish? Yeah, Scottish. Mate.
That's one I can do, but I'm afraid if I do it for too long, it gets offensive.
Just do it, the 2 of us, for the ones watching.
Yeah.
I could get my accents out too. So.
Yeah. That's another reason why I only do nonfiction narration books. I'm afraid if I do an accent, I'll be like, oh, he's not pulling that off very well.
Yeah, you'll be canceled before you know it.
Certain. I'll be canceled when I submit the first 15 minutes for reviews. Like, no, we're not doing this.
You should do mine with the French accent. What is it? Bulgarian, Dutch. It'd be fun to hear, though.
Yeah, well, it would definitely be fun, not quality work, though. All right. Well, as we bring the show to a close, is there anything you'd like to plug or let your readers know about? I know we've gone over, I think, probably the lion's share of your upcoming appearances, but maybe just want to reiterate some things.
I really appreciate the time you took to talk to me. And as I told you before we recorded, that the questions were super insightful. And I appreciate when someone takes the actual time to get to know the person and the book. So I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you. I would just say, if you don't follow me yet, please do, and I'll give you a follow back. I'm Alan Shivers, author, in one word, on Instagram and TikTok. Tried Blue Sky, but I'm not really sure what's happening in that sky yet. So I'll keep you posted on that sky.
Yeah.
But yeah, please give me a follow. And by the way, the books, we're all living on a budget, let's be honest. If you're on KU, all my books are free on KU to read. And if there's a bit of budget left, give my paperbacks a go. If you want to give someone a Christmas present, give the hard copies a go, etc. How much plug-in?
Yeah. Paperbacks for stocking stuffers, hardbacks for the full-on gifts.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. To be fair, actually, the weird thing is that as an author, we earn more from paperbacks than hardcovers. I can only speak for myself, but because the cost is so much higher, right? So, yeah. Production cost is way higher, so there's a big difference there. But I'm happy with any reader, even if it's for 5 pages. Anyone who gives it a chance, I'm grateful for. So,
all right, sounds good. Well, definitely do stick around after we shut the stream down. Just have some quick info to give you. But listeners at home, both live and on demand, all links are in the description. And Alan, thank you again for joining me.
Thanks for joining. Well, thanks for joining. Thanks for asking. Sorry.
Say it with me.
Namaste.
Namaste, bitches. Like one more.
Okay.
One.
Namaste.
No. We got to namaste?
The proper way. Okay.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, we can do it. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Namaste, bitches. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can watch the episodes live. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode featuring the best and brightest writers and filmmakers of dark literature and film. So until then, stay healthy, stay sane, and as always, thank you for listening. See you next time.